Um, so our main event today is Ariel Weiss. We're in for a real treat. I've had the pleasure of being Ariel's student for the last year and a half or so. Ariel is a noted teacher of the Alexander technique, which is a comprehensive approach to developing awareness and optimal functioning of the mind-body. Ariel will tell you more about that. In addition to her own thriving practice in Philadelphia and Wallingford, she teaches at the Curtis Institute of Music. She also has done a lot of teaching at Temple University and the University of the Arts. She presents locally, nationally, and internationally to other people in the field. So she is not only a great teacher, but she is also a great teacher of teachers. So I'm going to let Ariel tell you more about what she has to do. But without further ado, Ariel Weiss. Oh, okay, I got to give you this. Whoops. Ariel. So this is your love. Put it somewhere on your shirt or necklace. It's not really long if you stay within a box there. The recording will pick up that much.
Good morning, everyone. Is that okay for sound? Oops, I guess I shouldn't have Fred hide the screen. Okay. Where's the camera for Zoom? So I just want to put Fred somewhere where they can see and not block the screen. How about like that? Is that good?
Okay. I will get your presentation up. Just give me a second here.
I do want to just take a moment and say thank you so much for having me this morning, and thank you to Jonathan for being such an ongoing support and marketing team. I think Alexander technique is sometimes a very well-kept secret. It is about 125 years old now. There are thousands of teachers around the world, and most people just haven't heard of what we do. Helping musicians has become a great passion for me. I started teaching at Curtis Institute about 26 years ago, and I started working with opera singers and had never heard an opera. I also don't read music. I quit piano lessons as a kid and kept up with my dance classes. So I studied dance technique my entire life. And interestingly, when I first started Curtis, I was very apologetic about my lack of musical training. In the end, sometimes I think it actually helps me because I am not distracted by what you know. I leave the musical expertise in your hands. That's your training. I call myself a movement specialist, but as Jonathan so wisely talked about the Alexander technique, it's not just about your body because you come with all your bits. So we like to say mind-body unity, that we are these beautiful systems. And when we're talking about the pursuit of making music, I really don't want to talk about mechanical things, right? Correct music is really not fun to listen to, yes? Soulful, fully embodied, fully realized music, yes? So in the spirit of that, I wanted to talk to you really about a version I did a TED Talk at the start of the pandemic when we all got sent home. And I was trying to figure out how to make myself useful in the world. I decided to do a TED Talk. And am I allowed to change the slides or do I have to ask you? Okay, so let's go back. Yeah, right. So now we can go forward. I'm sorry, my bad. This space is really kind of incredible. I just have to say that. Why is helping musicians such a passion of mine? Because I get you as artists. but also here's my premise. I think you all have been taught very little about your own working, movable parts. As pianists, it tends to be fingers, hands, wrists, maybe as far as the elbows. And I have a newsflash for you. That's all connected to the rest of you. Remember that song some of us sang when we were little, the knee bones connected to the, yeah, that one. It's true. And so when you're only thinking of your system locally, you are missing out on great potential. And may I just say, for those of you that are pianists, you all get injured more. You get injured more because you practice more. Yes? And this localization of how you consider yourselves in music making, I'm not going to blame you for it, but it's not helping. And I would like to be of help to you. How many of you are pianists that are right in front of you right now? Look at that, the whole room. Okay, so I'd like to speak more generally for anyone that's online, but I will kind of point my talk to piano playing since everyone in the room is one of those. Okay, so you actually are your primary instrument. Please let that sink in for a minute. I've seen player pianos that play themselves. I went to Longwood Gardens and saw an organ that was playing itself, and I was bereft. Yes? Like, that piano needs you. And by the way, so does the harp, and so does the timpani, and so does the, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, we don't want to just plug and play. Would we agree? I hope you agree with me. Yes? We're interested. Oh, I should stop doing that. Excuse me. Sorry, I keep touching my necklace. I'll stop. Yeah, so when we talk about movement, and you as music educators, does that mean you have to go study Alexander technique, like Jonathan is doing so beautifully, not just for his own benefit, but for his students? No, not necessarily. I'd like to give you some rules of the road today so that you're including this idea of physicality of your student and yourself without needing to be the expert, but I also want to steer you away from what I call postural myths. Those things that I think most all of us were taught that are not only inaccurate, I think they're not helping and even causing harm. All right, so with all due respect to all of the elders in your life and mentors and teachers that said things that I'm going to question today, they meant well. We're here to educate ourselves so that we do slightly better. Yes, that's all we can do. All right, so thanks, Jonathan. Next slide. No worries. I'm a huge fan of Yo-Yo Ma. For one thing, I think he looks like he's having more fun than anyone else on stage. He's so joyous, and he's so open. And when he's not playing, he's listening to the hall. He's enjoying his colleagues. He truly loves music, right? When you bring that on stage, it always goes better, may I just say. So I'm here today to talk about promoting ease in mastery. Because whoa, that's okay. Because if you're using more effort than you need, I call that strain. So do you need to work hard to do what you do? Yes. That's not the only skill you need. And when we promote ease and mastery, we get better music, and we get happier and healthier musicians. I used to produce a conference, an Alexander Technique conference, for musicians. Freedom to Make Music in New York City. We did it for 3 years. And I did some research into statistics about injuries with mostly orchestral musicians. And the statistics are downright scary. Anywhere from 50 to 80% of orchestral musicians are injured at one time. More like 80%, like, have you ever been injured? I mean, that's just not okay, yes? We don't need to suffer for our art. We need to get a little smarter. All right. Next slide. So I found this quote by T.D. Jakes, who I believe is a pastor. Here we are in a church. Nice fit. If you think down, you will go down. If you think up, you'll go up. We always travel in the direction of our thinking. I just thought it was like the perfect quote and very much what Mr. Alexander's discoveries are all about. We can go to the next slide. So there he is, Frederick Matthias Alexander. So who was he? Well, he was actually an actor. And the reason why he set about making his discoveries that we now call Alexander technique is because he had a problem as a young man. As an aspiring orator, he started to lose his voice on stage. There's some different opinions. Some people say hoarse, some people say losing it, some people think it was vocal nodules. We don't exactly know, or I don't exactly know. I should be more specific. But what happened was he decided to fix his own problem because he was an artist, right? He wanted to get back to his art. We can understand that, I think, yes? And so he sat about in this process of self-discovery. And that process is what we're going to talk about. It involves observation. What am I actually doing? He used mirrors, yes? There are many ways to observe yourself. We'll do some today. And that observation led him to notice some of what he called patterns of interference. So then we have to learn how to prevent that pattern that we don't want and choose a pattern we do. We choose to come back into balance, integration, agreement. We can use many words. He called it primary control. He called his best organizing, coordinating movement primary control. And what he really realized was that the quality of his coordination was impacting everything. What do I mean? Well, he wanted to fix that vocal problem, yes? But as it turns out, FM was a kind of sickly young man. He had respiratory ailments. I think his circulation wasn't so great. And all of a sudden, when he started getting rid of that little pattern of interference before he went to speak, his overall health improved, which is interesting. It's not what he was trying to do. So the quality of our coordination impacts everything we do, from how peaceful you are when you try to meditate, to whether you're able to do that trill with the freedom you're looking for, or get the resonance and the sound of the power of those big chords. Yes? It's impacting my circulation, my imagination. I like to say all my systems, yes, not just my physical systems. And then, as T.D. Jakes points out, what you think is what you get. Yes? So our thinking system and our moving system is always connected. Our thinking, we always move according to what we think. Which leads me to, not quite yet. So I love this picture of this little guy I found. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, that's perfect. He's working really hard at Legos. Yeah, he's biting his tongue, he's punching his shoulders. Yes, he's concentrating. Unfortunately, when little guys concentrate like this, we often applaud them. He's working hard. Good job. Yeah, not to me. That's strain. What I said earlier. If you're working hard at something, working harder than you need to at something, that's wasted effort. So is biting your tongue going to help you fit Legos together? That's not productive work. Is hunching your shoulders going to help you see better? No, it's not. Luckily, this little guy, I think, probably when he gets up from the Lego table, probably lets that go. But when we do that at our computers, I'm on that line, yes. When we get up from our computer, we have not let that go as much, yes? And so we've lost some of that flexibility because we think this is a good idea. So think about the language with your students when they need to practice more. No doubt they do, yes? But when you get your students practicing out of a place of agreement, yes, because they love music, right? They pick music they like, or et cetera. I don't want to tell you to do your job. It's going to make a difference in their physicality, is my point. Yes? You already know that, with all due respect. So instead of working hard, next slide, we're going to clarify our intention. So it's dangerous when I talk about sports. I don't know much about them, but I imagine, with my imagination system, that basketball players all need to train to do free throws, right? They all have to be able to do that, right? So they need to practice that, yes. So if they practice going, I hope I don't miss, I hope I don't miss, I imagine they do much worse than if they practice going, I know where the basket is. I know where the basket is, yes? So that's my silly way of saying, clarify your intention. It's not what you don't want, it's what you do want. The other classic example is don't think about pink elephants. What do you think about? Right? So you're steering your students right to what you don't want them to do. Find the positive. What do I want? Okay, basket didn't go in this time. Happens, right? No basketball player gets the basketball in the basket every single time. Yes? So don't dwell on that. Say, okay, take a breath. What do you want? What do you want? Okay, so we're going to clarify intention. That's a picture of a Ferrari. More things I don't really know a lot about, but I do imagine that it's a lot more fun to drive that car when you take the parking brake off. That car probably doesn't even have a parking brake on, but you get my point, yes? Has that ever happened to you? Because it sure has happened to me. I'm like, what is wrong? I can't steer. It feels weird, right? And you go, oh, right? So I'm calling your parking brake that resistance, right? So think about working hard. If I said, you really need to work harder, what do you feel in your body right now? You're probably starting to squeeze yourself. Can you feel it? Why did you do that? Because I directed your thinking by asking you to do something, yes? And you always physicalize what you think, yes? So that squeezing yourself like a toothpaste tube, I doubt makes better music. I doubt it highly, because that's you putting the emergency brake on and then hitting the gas. Usually we take our foot off the brake and then we hit the gas, yes? But I hope before you hit the gas, you know where you're going. It is a crude analogy, but it's kind of a nice, simple one that actually you could use with a very young student, couldn't you? Maybe not a car brake. Maybe you have to talk about bicycle brakes. I'm not sure. Come back and let me know what you figure out. Okay. So we're going to, go back 1 second. We're going to reduce the interference, reduce the resistance, and increase support. So we're going to reduce interference, but we're going to increase support. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Body mapping. Body mapping is a term that was coined by Bill and Barbara Conable. Bill and Barbara Conable are Alexander Technique teachers that I had the great opportunity to be studying with and learning with at Marge Barso's workshops in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Bill Conable is a cellist. And Bill Conable taught in Cincinnati. I think I've got the right place in Ohio. In any case, he noticed something teaching Alexander Technique to his young cello students. He noticed, most famously, the story as it was told to me, was a very young prodigy who started developing tendonitis in their bowing elbow, tennis elbow. It happens to a lot of cellists. What Bill noticed was that his young protege was not bending at his elbow. He was not bending his elbow. Yes? And so Bill tried to get this young student to bend his elbow, and it was a boy, by the way, and couldn't get him to bend his elbow, and Bill had a bit of a light bulb moment. He realized that that young protege was going through a growth spurt. I never had a growth spurt like that. I never grew 12 inches in a year. But my ex did. Yes. Grew a lot in 1 year. And so literally that young cellist didn't know where his elbow joint was anymore. It had moved. It had moved. And he was trying to move where his elbow joint used to be. And Bill said, oh, let's figure out where your elbow joint is and where it is and how does it move. And I'm happy to report that young protege was able to recover and go on to an illustrious career. So Bill started calling that body mapping. You're going to stand up right now, young gentlemen. Yes. I can see him squirming. So the Alexander teacher's like, you can walk around a little bit. It's okay. No one gets hurt on my watch. Okay. So, right. So body mapping is this idea that whether or not you've articulated it consciously, we all have some sense of our physicality. And Bill called that a map. So you have some sense of the shape of you and kind of how things function that may or may not be accurate. For instance, in my dance training, I was a modern dancer, and we stand in parallel a lot. So I stood like this, plies and all kinds of things in parallel, and I kind of thought my legs were like tree trunks. Yes? Tree trunks. Can you imagine it? Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is Fred. And Fred was on the... Oh, I don't know. Are you able to see Fred? Well, he's got a clip that's broken, but can you see that there's an angle to your femurs? They're not hanging this way. They're actually hanging at an angle. It's not up and down. It's not straight. There's an angle. So, for instance, that's a body mapping error that I needed to clarify. So what Bill realized is that if your map is incorrect, if what you're thinking is slightly off, you're always going to try to move according to the map. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you an experiential way. You ready? I'm going to ask you to look at your palm. And I'm going to ask you to look at where your fingers meet your palm. And I'm going to ask you to try to move where your fingers meet your palm. Try to move your fingers where they meet your palm. Okay? And now I'm going to ask you to flip your hand over and see where your knuckles are. So your knuckles are where the joints are to move your fingers, yes? But if you look back on your palm, your knuckles are down here, right? And if you were trying to move up here, can you see how hard that is? Yeah, why is that so hard? Because there's no joint there. Joints are where bones meet and move. If you're trying to move in the middle of a bone, you can try really hard. You can try really hard, and you can think, yeah, I'm getting where my fingers meet my palm. But you create a lot of resistance because that's not where the joint is. Just like the cellist trying to move his elbow where it used to be, a couple inches north. It's like, oh, is that making sense? So part of what we're going to do today is clarify some body mapping errors that are quite common, right? But the funny thing is, I'm still uncovering body mapping. They can be kind of subtle. My teacher that I trained the Alexander teacher with used to wheel the skeleton out and just have us stare at it and say, does anything surprise you? Which I thought was kind of silly, may I just say, in my 20s. And now, 40 years later, I'm like, oh, I'm still being surprised. And I've studied a fair amount of anatomy, but I can learn it intellectually. It's when you kind of look and go, oh, how did I really have that in me? Yes? So again, you do not need to be an anatomical expert, right? That's not what I'm saying. We want to learn some simple truths, and we don't want to get in the way by imposing ideas. That's the most important thing for you as educators, is if you kind of have open-ended ideas about physicality, at least you're not going to impose incorrect ideas. We'll talk more. Have I gotten you curious yet? Awesome. Aha! We have arrived to posture posture myth number 1. I can't speak today. Yeah, I've got 3 myths. Yes? I'll just go ahead and tell you all 3. The first myth is that posture is a place. Right? When someone tells you to fix your posture, yes? How many of you think a picture? It's kind of what we think of as posture. As a matter of fact, I'd like to go on record that for me as an Alexander teacher to have made a TED Talk with the word posture in it was very radical and looked down upon by many of my colleagues. I'm a rebel. Yes? Because we don't teach about posture. There's a lot of Alexander teachers that don't want to use that word like it's a bad word. Yes? It's not a bad word. And lots of people are interested in their posture. And mostly what we've been taught about posture is helping you. So I decided to go at it a different way. Use the word people are interested in, but get you to think about it differently. So the first thing is, it's not a place. I can't remember how many movable joints we have in our body. It's a lot. Would you agree? Can you see how many movable places there are? Yeah. So the idea that there would be one right place is preposterous. And pianos are beautifully large instruments. So if you think there is one way to be at a piano, good luck. Your repertoire of music is going to be quite limited, yes? So you need to be able to move, yes? By the way, all musicians need to move. Singers sometimes think they don't need to move. It does not help their singing when they park and bark, yes? Everyone needs to move. Music is made through movement. So, can I see what the next slide is? Okay, let's go back to number 1. I'm going to invite you, like I did in my TED Talk, to join me in standing if you feel comfortable doing that. If you prefer to participate just by observing, it's A-okay. I ask that you participate in a way that makes sense to you, all right, and feels comfortable for you. And if you feel comfortable doing so, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. And just notice for a moment that as you're standing with your eyes closed, there's some movement happening. Or notice if there is movement happening. Notice if there's any movement in your ankle joints or hip joints or in your knees. I'm hoping there might be some movement in your rib joints and ribs to allow you to breathe. Be a long time to hold your breath. And when your ribs move, your lungs move, and your diaphragm moves, your viscera moves, your shoulders might move a tiny bit. In contact improvisation, we call that the small dance. And it's always there. So in a moment, in your own time, when you feel ready, I invite you to gently open your eyes and notice what happens to your small dance when you open your eyes? Nice. Yeah. Did anyone notice movement when they were standing still? Yeah. Yeah. That's your balancing mechanism. That's your balancing mechanism. It's why I have a picture of a tightrope walker. Feel free to have a seat again. Because I think it's the most apparent. I was in a park once and I saw someone on a slack line, which is like a tightrope near the ground. And I was like, wow. So I'm such a geek about watching how the world moves. It's my thing. It's my jam. So I was like, ooh. And this young man asked if I wanted to turn. So I tried it. It's very humbling. Very humbling, but boy, was it fun to try, yeah? And I used everything I know as a movement specialist, as an Alexander teacher, right? And one thing I knew was not to lock down, right? Because if you lock down, you go right over, yes? That tightrope walker is using a lot of micro, or maybe not so micro, to stay balanced, right? It's in my TED Talk because in my dance training, I was a terrific jumper and not very good at balancing on one leg. And balancing on one leg is a core skill set for dance training, at least the kind of dance I was doing. I was doing mostly modern with some ballet. There's something. It's kind of interesting. I'm just listening. Sorry, I'm being distracted. Okay. We hear something. For people on Zoom, we hear some scurrying. I'll protect you. Okay. Okay. So in dance, let's go back to we do what we think. Yeah, so guess what the language is in the dance class when they want you to balance? Hold. Hold to, let me start counting. Longer the better. Yeah. So what was I trying to do? Very compliant. I was holding. You told me to hold, I held. Guess what happened to me? Right? Yeah. So then I went and had an Alexander lesson, workshop. And the teacher, I said, I want help standing on one leg. This is what I need to improve at. Yes? Well, that Alexander teacher helped me unhold. It felt so strange to me, I couldn't believe it. But guess what happened? My balance improved. I was like, what just happened? So guess what I did? I graduated from college and I moved to Philadelphia to train to be an Alexander teacher. I said, I'm going to figure that out. That is not what I was trying to do, but it worked better. I like things that work better. Yes? So me, trying to work hard, hold, did not work better. Yes? So I have a company policy. Don't believe anything I say. I know a lot, I am not jerking you around, but if you believe me, you don't engage in that process of self-discovery. I'm a teacher. Yes? If you go, oh, Ariel said posture is in place. Huh, what does that mean? Am I trying to be in a place? Does that make me feel more comfortable? Find out. If I get you curious and experimenting, you will learn way more than if you leave. Yes? Okay. So, right now in your seats, have you collapsed into a still place? So, can you just look for your small dance seat? Your small dance. That's what they call it in contact improv. Those little micro movements. So where could we find some micro movements? Well, breathing's easy. Right? Your ribs have to move to breathe. Yes. And when your ribs move and your diaphragm moves, your guts move. Right? So you might feel some movement. Put your hand on your belly if you want. Right? And maybe you could feel a little bit of movement in between your head and your spine up here, what I like to call your nodding joints. Just see if they're stuck, or are they just movable. They don't have to wiggle to be movable, right? But yeah, just ask. Just inquire. Oh, am I movable? And where would I have to kind of put myself or change so I can be more mobile? But we'll talk more about that. Right. Especially when you're in a long meeting. Yes? Or, I don't know, sometimes long operas or concerts or movies. Yes? Like, am I still mobile? Am I still mobile? Okay. Let's move to posture reflecting too. This is my favorite. These slides are different. What's the most common thing that you've been told about posture? Or stand up straight. Oh, we're getting to that one next. You are on it. That's exactly, that's my experience. Yes. Yeah. So may I ask you all right now to have a slump? Gently. Yeah. So please notice, because I'm about to ask you to sit up straight. Yes? I want you to notice what you do to do that. And I want you to notice how much effort and or strain you feel. Ready? Here we go. Sit up straight. Yeah. Now can you look at each other for a moment? Yeah. How many people look more comfortable? How many people feel more comfortable? Okay, we have a couple people. Yeah. I call this up and tight. And please feel free to laugh. Because who the heck needs my help being up and tight? Like I have that one down, thank you very much. I don't need any help. Yes? Up and free requires a different strategy. Why do I want free? Because tight is your parking brake on. It's immobile. If you have to move to make a big leap up or down the piano, when you have engaged tight muscles to use your core, that's like the modern day version, yes? Use your core, yes? Yes, core is important, but it's just part of your whole. And most people, when they engage their core, are interfering, in my not so humble opinion. Yes? So what did you do? Well, first of all, why is it in there? Does it look straight? Your spine? Not even close. I mean, seriously. I color-coded Fred when we went on the TED stage because I realized it's hard to see an all-white skeleton, yes? Is that a good angle for a zoom? Yeah. So the orange is his cervical spine. That's your neck curve. And your cervical curve is curved forward towards the front of your body. So curves that go forward in the body are called lordotic or lordosis, lordotic curves. It's just anatomical for it goes forward. You right? Below our neck curve, by the way, your neck curve doesn't just go forward. So this is the front of the body. It doesn't just go forward. If it only went forward, it would end up here like a flagpole. Right? So it's a curve, right? So it curves forward, but can you see at the top it's actually going back? So your neck curve goes forward into your throat and then up and back to the middle of your skull. Can you see that on Fred? So below your neck curve that goes forward, you have a curve that goes back. And that's your thoracic curve. And that's all the spine bits attached to your ribs. And so that's in blue on Fred. Can you see that? Right. And then, are you noticing a pattern yet of balance? When a curve goes forward, the next one goes back. So the next curve's going to go forward. Yeah. So that's your low back. That's your lumbar spine. Yes? And we tend to know more about lumbar curves because now their cars have lumbar support, right? It's a little bit more on our radar that we're supposed to have a curve there, right? In fact, I went to a chiropractor once, and he, sorry, he told me that if I simply increase my lumbar curve, that all my back problems would go away and I would be fine. And I went, really? I never went back, because that's a load of untruth. It's not true. What do we want from our curves? All of them. We want all of our curves. Hello, I want all of my curves. Yes? I do not need to impose an idea of straightness. Yes? Or more is better, very supersized in the American culture. No, more is not better. Balance and mobility. Balance and mobility. I'm like a broken record. I say those over and over. Okay, so, but we have a lumbar curve that goes to the front. Which way is the next curve going to go? To the back. You can find that curve if you cup your hand. In between the fleshy parts of your glutes is that sacrum. I have it in green on Fred. And I also put his coccyx in green. Right? So your tailbone is curved to the front. So now join me in finding these curves in you. You're not going to be able to feel your tailbone. That's way under there. Yes? But that tailbone is going towards the front of your body. From that forward, I'm going to count 5 changes of direction. Anatomists named 3 curves, so I actually find it quite helpful to name all 5 changes of direction. So here we go. You're going to point your fingers forward, and then you're going to come first change of direction back to your sacrum. Everyone find it? Great. From there, if you go up, you can feel that curve going forward into the small of your back. So that's 2 changes of direction. If your hand keeps going up and you haven't arched your back to get up there, you'll feel your ribs start to come back in space. That's our 3rd change. If you come up to the bump out, that bump in your neck, the base of your neck, can you see how that blue bumps out? We're going to go forward. That's 4th change of direction. We go forward from the bump out. If you strain your neck forward, you've got a flagpole neck. So we're not going to do that. We're going to let the top of our neck come up and back. That's our 5th change of direction. That's a lot of curves. If we were straight up and down, like a broomstick, we'd be a lot more teetery. Those curves help you balance. The curves also give you more range of motion. So when I want to look up, the forward curve of my neck and my low back aid in that range of motion. And when I want to reach down, the backward curve of my thorax helps me go into flexion. Right? Also, because it's curvy, we have better absorption to do things like walk or run or jump, right? If they were all stacked up, right, those discs would have a harder time. The curve also like a coiled spring, right? So many reasons. So we don't want to override them. So, what can you say to your students instead of sit up straight? Because if your student sits in front of the piano, or picks up their trumpet, or et cetera, it doesn't matter here, right? If they are floppy like this, I had a violinist. My youngest Alexander student was a 7-year-old violinist. She used to stand like this. I could just crack up. She was adorable. She was like a little rag doll, right? And I didn't want to have her tighten up, right? So I don't remember all the things I tried with her. I was like, how tall is your tree today? Or once I was teaching a class of tween girls, a dance class, and they all stood in front of me like this. And I was like, They didn't ask me to teach Alexander technique, but it's really hard to dance like that. And I was like, oh wow, their bodies are changing, and they're a little embarrassed, and right? Like, it's a thing. So I just talked to them about, can you look at the room around you and decide that you are exactly the right height? And they all just moved, and I almost wept, because it was beautiful. I just asked them to inhabit themselves, and I just got creative about how I asked for it. Yes? So please, feel free to steal anything. If there's something helpful that you like, please steal away. Yes? But also, please feel free to come up with your own voice and own humor and an own way to get to these things. Yes? There's not one way. There are many, many ways. And I hope to give you guiding principles that you feel emboldened to find some new ways in your teaching. Yeah? Enjoy being how tall you are. Try that instead of sit up straight. See how it goes. All right. Yeah, let's go on. Any questions? Any surprises so far? Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Jonathan. Pardon me. I knew there was something I wanted to do. May I ask you, please, to gently go back into your slump? Yeah. So, what has happened to the curves of your slump right now? They got closer together. Yeah. Anything else? So which curves are accented? Yeah, almost. First part, yes. So when we slump, my backward curves, my kyphotic curves, my ribs and my sacrum are more curved back. My forward curves, so let's do this again. May I ask you all to just balance comfortably in an upright way? That was a little awkward and wordy. You'll do better than me. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you to put your hand, if you can, comfortably in your low back. If that's uncomfortable to put your hand back there, if you have a neighbor, you can ask your neighbor if you can put a hand on their back, right? So don't hurt yourself doing this. Yeah. So now slump gently and see which way that curve moves. It goes backwards. Can you feel it now? Yeah. So can you see a strategy I just used? I didn't want to correct you and say, oh, yes, that's wrong. Because you were actively engaged in discovery. Yay! So, but your feelings about it were kind of guesses that weren't so accurate. Yes? Or maybe you're doing something different and that I didn't expect, which is also possible. Yeah, absolutely. So what did I do? I asked you to repeat the experiment, and I gave more support, is the way I would say it, by getting you to use touch. Let's find out what's going on here. Sometimes Jonathan will tell you, I'll ask permission, I'll say, may I put your hand on my low back? So that my student can feel what's going on in my coordination. Sometimes I'll ask my students just to watch. Sometimes we listen together. Yes? So we engage our sensory apparatus to find out what's going on. Yeah, because there's many different ways to describe the situation. Yeah. So now we lose our lordotic curves. By the way, your neck does the same thing. Your neck is in flagpole position. There's no curve anymore. That's called forward head position. It's a medical diagnosis now. Yeah? But now, what happens if you sit up straight, gently? Well, hold on a second. Yeah. Is it back in alignment? What happened to your rib curve when you sat up straight? Come on up. Can I ask you to come up? Is it Carol? Do you mind coming up? Oh, I'm sorry, are you okay? May I ask you to put your hand on my back, on my ribs? So up here. There we go. So you're on my thoracic spine. Yeah, you can put your whole hand flat on the, yeah, perfect. Great. So here's my slump. So my thoracic curve went more backwards. Can you feel it? Towards you, right? But now I'm going to stand up straight. Which way did your hands go?
My hands kind of left your body, but then my palms are no longer on your body.
Yeah, because my thoracic spine got shoved forward. And I got a lot more rigid. Can you feel that? Yeah. So more is not better, and hello, less is not better. What did I say over and over again? Balance and mobility. Can you feel a difference? Yeah. So, how many people told us to sit up straight? Lots. I don't know, but in my life, lots. Yes? And I thought that was the thing to do. I believed them. I was compliant. Yes? Yeah, you tell them to sit up straight. And it helps to a point, but with a cost. This is what I want you to start paying attention to. When you tell them to sit up straight, they get tighter. Don't believe me? Check it out. And do you really want them playing piano with their parking brake engaged? Yes?
You don't want to.
Right. Thank you. If you want to, that's fine. Just, do you need help navigating the wires? Okay. So I applaud you for having some thoughtfulness, right? Right? Good for you. And, be a living document. Continue to evolve, right? I love it when my Curtis alum come back and have a lesson with me, because I'm like, oh good, I'm teaching this in a new way. And I can't wait to share it with you, right? I continue to evolve how I teach things. So, yes, that's better than not saying anything at all and just assuming sit up straight is great all the time. And it might be better to start swapping out sit up straight with some other, experiments. Try to find some other ways to say that and just watch your students and see if they get upright and straight instead of up and tight, yeah? They'll sit upright. It's hard to get it out of your language. Yes, and that's terrific, and that may work for most of your students, and then, we all have that one student that nothing we try, but everyone else works. You all have a student like that, right? We learn more from those students than any other, right? So how do we help that student? And how do we welcome that as a challenge? Ooh, I'm about to learn something. Yes? Yeah. Yes, but I love the language. You see, I've been teaching on Vim a lot over the last 3 years, so I came up with lots of really cheesy ways to show my response. Yeah, you just get a round of applause. Why? Free, did you hear the language? Free from, what did you say, free from? Yeah, free. I heard the word free. So what am I promoting? Balance and mobility. Free really is in that camp. Oh yeah. Free is instead of, next slide, what did everyone else teach you to do? I think shoulders are the most bossed around body part. Why shoulders? I'm not sure, right? But everyone felt free to tell you where to put your shoulders. And guess what? They don't know where your shoulders belong, and hello, you don't either. Remember my first idea? Posture isn't a place. There is no one place for your shoulders to be. Stop bullying them. Please don't tell your students where to put their shoulders. I know you mean well, and I know this is a problem. But there are other ways. And you just provided it. Thank you. That was brilliant, right? Yeah, look for freedom. Yes, look for freedom. So, posture myth number 3. Shoulders do not belong back. And hello, what's the other thing they tell you to do? Yeah, because what happens when you put your shoulders back and down? Do you get freer or do you get tighter? Try to move your arms around like that, guys. No. Just take it right out of your language, and if you hear it coming out of your mouth, have a laugh and correct yourself in front of your students. Model that you are teaching yourself a better way. Model it. Say, oops, that's my old thinking, my new thinking, right? Correct yourself right in front of your students with glee. What is that? Clarifying your intention. That's a great thing to model to your students. You don't have to model being perfect. You are not. Neither am I. I screw up all the time. I just try to celebrate it. Yeah. So, why is that a myth? Well, first of all, actually, oops. Fun with Fred. Okay. Let's talk about this for a second. There's a reason why people told us to put our shoulders back and down. There's a reason, right? Why? Because we're doing what your student was doing. Shoulders rounded forward and hunched up. Absolutely. I'm not saying this is what we want. I'm questioning how we correct it so that we don't just add more strain, right? Yeah. So again, I applaud you for noticing that extra tension in your student that isn't going to help them play, right? And I applaud you having your students try something, and you use an imaginative, right, ragdoll, which I think using imagination is a powerful tool with kids and adults, yes. And when we're talking about art making, music making, I think it's a great system to call upon. Yes, but Jonathan wants to chime in.
A common thing I notice with young children, let's say age 7 or younger, many piano benches are not the ideal height for them. And if I see their arms are like this and their shoulders are that, what has to be corrected is the first thing I do is I tell them make a video at home. I want to see how you're doing on the bench. And if it's too low, I have them buy either a planter's pad or a blanket over it. And I show them. So when they consider an ideal height, they don't need to do this. So I find that more than 50% of the time when there's an issue with the shoulders, the student may be sitting at a less than optimal distance or less than optimal.
A lot of wisdom in the room, yes? And that's pointing right back to also what I talked about at the beginning, that if you're only thinking locally, right, you're missing out on the whole system. So Alexander technique, what Mr. Alexander really discovered was that the part affects the whole. And the coordination of the whole, right, the coordination of specifically your head on your spine is impacting the coordination of all of your systems. But the part affects the whole. So we're not just going to teach our students what to do with their shoulders, we're going to look at the whole system. But some fun facts about your shoulders. So your shoulders, I like to call it a bridge. That's not what it's called in any anatomy book that I know of. But I'll tell you why I call it, it's called a girdle. It's called your shoulder to girdle, but my grandma said he wore a girdle, and that's all I can think of when I use that word, because it was this quite contraption that allowed no movement, yes? And your shoulder girdle allows for a great deal of movement. So I've just nicknamed it because I'm an artist, okay? And I call it a bridge because we live with Ben Franklin Bridge. It's a suspension bridge. Yes, my daughter made a toothpick suspension bridge when she was in grade school. Yeah? So your green here on Fred is your collarbones, your clavicles. So can you find yours, please? Your collarbones start at your sternum. Your sternum is the bony bit here. And you can feel little knobby knobs right here. That's the end of your collarbone. That's where your arms start. Your clavicles and your scapula, your shoulder blades and your collarbones are part of your appendicular skeletal system. Appendicular is from the root appendage, that means limb. So please put your left hand on the end of your right collarbone and move your right arm around. What's happening under your finger? It's moving. Woohoo! It's an arm bone. So I like to say closing lines. My shirt has a seam here. So one might think this is my arm and this is my torso. Not how it's built. Your wingspan, yes, your arms connect here, first arm joint. Now put the same hand on the back and find this bony ridge of your shoulder blade. And you see how the green tape goes, this is a continuous line. The acromion joint here has a bit of give, but it's not an articulating joint. It doesn't roll around. So that means when your collarbone moves, your shoulder blade moves. So you can feel this bony ridge in the back. Can you feel it right up here? And move that arm around. Woohoo! What do we get? Movement. Movement. So if you're trying to play piano on your arms, I'm using air quotes, right? Instead of what I call your wingspan, you're going to have less resonance, you're going to have less power, and you're going to have less agility. That's going to mess up speed and ornaments. Other than that, it's a fine idea. And it's going to help you injure yourself. Right? So we have a suspended, I didn't get to my point yet. I'm going to bring my hand up Fred's ribs. Peekaboo. Peekaboo. Your arm structure is not designed to sit on your ribs like a shelf. Your arm structure suspends from your sternum. I'm going to say that again. Your arm structure is not built to sit on your ribs. Pull your shoulders down, please. Now your arm structure is sitting on your ribs. Go ahead and breathe. Now stop pulling your arms down onto your ribs. So I teach this slightly differently than you do, Carol. See what you think of this. Again, I am not trying to tell you that my way is better or the only way. What I would like to do is get you all super curious and letting your creative self fly to come up with a way that makes sense to you. I'm going to ask you to find the ends of that shoulder bridge. And I'm going to ask you to enjoy arcing that bridge up and in, right? Because that's it, your arms don't come off your ribs, they rotate, right? So it's an arc. Whoop. Yeah, but you don't have to tighten your neck. You can just do it softly. And now we're going to arc out. Out. So shoulders are not elevators, up and down. Shoulders arc, up and out. So when I go out, notice if you have a little habit to overshoot horizontal and go down, because that feels normal to some of us. Yes? So do it again. Arc, and then out and away. Yeah. So it's a little bit like that suspension bridge. It should feel free and mobile. Ready for anything. Piano music does lots of crazy things, right? You need to be ready for anything. By the way, clarinets, horn, you too. All right? So up and then out, not down. Out and away. Suspension bridge. Did that feel different to you to do it that way, Carol or anyone else? Okay. So we don't want to crowd this space, right? We don't want to like exaggerate. More isn't better, right? But less isn't better either. I call that Goldilocks, like somewhere in the middle. Okay? But, oops, sorry. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in addition to shoulders not belonging down, they also don't belong back. So the red dots in my slide here are showing you that your shoulder joint, let's first define what a shoulder joint is, please. So can you find your upper arm bone? That's called your humerus. And that red dot, right over, oh, I should have brought my, I might have some with me. I have googly eyes that I kept thinking, oh, I wish I had like a little eyeball here. And I was like, oh, I bought some googly eye stickers. I think I have some. You can all have a googly eye sticker to take home with you. Yeah, put it right there is where your humeral head is, right? You're not really feeling much of anything. I'm just wanting you to find the top of that bone. There's not something really to feel there. It's just the top of your, but it's not here on your shoulder bones. We're on our arm. We're on our arm. That's your humeral head. So your arm bone meets, are you ready for it? The shoulder joint. So joints are spaces. Spaces where bones meet and move. So this bone's going to meet another bone. You ready? Find your shoulder blade and come underneath your armpit. Your humerus meets your shoulder blade, has the top ridge, and then underneath the top ridge is another part of your shoulder blade that comes down, and then the shoulder, very shallow socket of your shoulder joint is facing the side of your body from underneath, from the back, not from the front. So how many of you thought your shoulder joint was up here somewhere, or up here somewhere? Almost everyone. Don't be embarrassed. Say, oh, that's my old thinking. Oh, cool. What's my new thinking? Well, the shoulder joint is where this bone meets this bone. And this never ceases to amaze me. I've been teaching this for 35 years. The joint is in the middle of your torso, forward back. Look at my slide. This is looking down from the top. There's the humeral head. There's the shoulder blade. Can you see forward to back? Can you see? And I'll show you on Fred. He's got attitude today. He had a ride in the country. So if I put my arms on Fred's torso to show you the front of his torso and the back of his torso, can you see that green tape? It's in the middle. I didn't make that up. I make lots of things up, but I didn't make that one up. Yes? And by the way, I say that all the time to my students, because I do make lots of stuff up, and I do try to be clear about when I'm teaching physiological facts, so you can correct your body math, and when I'm being creative. Yes? Parking brakes is my creative, like you don't have a parking brake. That's my creative way of getting at that. So, why do people want to bring your shoulders back? Because you hunch your shoulders forward. But I said don't bring your shoulders back. So how are we going to get our shoulders into balance? shall we? So, please, as gently as you can, have a little fun. Did your shoulders roll forward? My shoulders are now at the front of my torso, right? If I put my shoulders back, my shoulders are at the back of my torso and my neck is really strained. Yes? So don't do that. Let your head move up and back in space and let your shoulders carry along for the simple reason they're attached. In my TED Talk, I say it's like letting the kite tail follow the kite. Do you have to give the kite tail instructions? No. But if you step on the kite, right? So if I move my head and go, Ariel said bring my head back, that doesn't feel good. Yes, I have stepped. Can you see me stepping on my kite tail? So all I have to do is let the whole system. You guys are, that looks really beautiful. Does that feel better? Because I just breathe better. Everyone just, for everyone at home, they all just move their heads and let their bodies follow it, and it was stunning. Yes. Yes. So, let's look at the next slide. I'm pretty sure it's the head down. Oh, nope. Let's come back to this. I always change my mind. No, I'm sorry. Let's go forward to. Yes, there it is. We'll come back to seat rockers. Head balance. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Head balance. You have a heavy head. It's true. But may I just say it's not too heavy? It really isn't. You know, people are like, oh, gravity is pulling down, and oh, my head's so heavy, my poor little neck. It's not too heavy because your head doesn't really balance on your neck. Can you see the center of your skull actually is balancing over the center of your lumbar vertebra? And your spine is, remember that nice curvy thing we discovered a little bit earlier? It's an ingenious design because as we travel south, each spine bone gets a bit bigger and chunkier because it's carrying more and more weight. Someone had their thinking cap on. Yes, that's a really great design, right? So our head weight doesn't balance over the little delicate parts up here. It's balancing over the chunky part down here. Smart design. It is like pyramid. Yeah, nice. We never thought of it that way. Thank you. Yeah. Well, they're very related. Yeah, they're both lordotic curves, and it's because of forward head position, right? So I call this on the right, right? Can you see that? I'll get out of your way. I'm sorry. Okay. First of all, heads can be upwards to 15 pounds. We don't all have the same size head. So I've always heard 12 to 15 pounds, right? But what is this demonstrating in this slide is that the further forward your head is in front of your spine, the more downward pressure it's exerting through your system. And it's exponential. That should scare you. Yeah? I call it the descent of man. And Mr. Alexander wrote in his books about the industrial age, because that's the age he lived in. And his point was that because people started pushing buttons to do work that they used to do manually, they got out of touch with their own movable bits. Because now they were doing this instead of this, right? Now, oh my word, if Mr. Alexander was alive, I don't know about you. I literally run my business from my phone. That's just, I'm old enough to be like, wow, that's just crazy. Yes? So we're even more sucked into our screens. Yes? And your students, whoa, oh my goodness. When I see little babies in strollers with screens, I just have a moment. Have a moment. Okay. I'm talking about your music teachers. You feel the same way. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we have this forward head position. Yes? So let's look at that a little bit more. So we have exponentially more downward pressure, right? And if they had moved that red line to show the center of your head, if it's not supported over a bony structure, the infrastructure of your spine, what's holding up your head? Yeah, which muscles? Your neck and back muscles. So, if you'd like, you could do a little experiment. You could put a hand on your back, and you could gently drop your head forward. You'll feel that curve go away, and you'll feel your back muscles start to tighten and tone. Because you don't want to hit the floor with your head. That's a good instinct, not to hit your head on the floor. But you're asking your back muscles and neck muscles to work 24/7, which is not their job. And when they start complaining to you, instead of yelling at them, I suggest thanking them for telling you you're out of balance. I say, oh, thanks for letting me know. I don't know. How can I move so that the middle of my skull, yes? So please put your fingers in your ears gently and nod, because you all know how to nod. So when you are nodding, you are rolling on the rockers on the underneath of your skull called condyles. And those condyles, those bumps, are rolling in an atlas, which is the name of your top spine bone. You are pointing right at them when you do this. If you imagine an axle, a bicycle axle, you are nodding. Yes? Yeah. So we want to put those nodding joints over the middle of your middle. So you might want to put one finger here or not. And say, oh, when am I over the middle of my middle, and what happened to your low back? Did your curve come back, and did your back muscles soften a little bit? Now, you can't play piano like this the whole time. You can't. It's a big instrument. Sometimes you have to come forward. Sometimes you have to shift, yes? But this is not a good rest place, right? This is a better rest place, and then we'll talk about it, but about how to move comfortably piano. Yeah? So instead of saying, can you sit up straight, you could say, oh, can you find the middle of your head being over the middle of your middle? So that it feels free, movable, comfortable, party. I don't know. Come up with your own language. It makes sense to you. Because people don't sit at a party like this. Right? So I don't know. Come up with something. Yes? Head weight over the middle. Of your middle. So I do a thing where I ask my students to put one hand on their belly and one hand in the small of their back. And then I ask them, can you put the middle of your head over the middle of your middle? And feel what that feels like. Now for kids, that probably feels comfortable. Sometimes this is not comfortable for people with their shoulder. So then, remember how I said you could get a friend to you could put your hand on someone else's back. You could do it with a neighbor if that's okay. I don't know. There's different ways of doing that, is my point. And then, of course, what we want to do is be able to feel that without using my hands. But guess what? Your sense of touch is much more developed than your proprioception. So I use those touch points. I've used them several times today to help kickstart your sense of where you are in space, which is your proprioception. Proprioception, also your kinesthetic sense. I know, we don't teach that. I know. I got it. How am I doing on time? I get a little crazy about this because my daughter, when she was, I can't remember if it was kindergarten or first grade, came home with this worksheet, My Five Senses. Taste, smell, touch, sight, hearing. Notice I left hearing out in a room full of musicians. Yeah? And I had a fit. I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder no one knows they have a kinesthetic sense. because they've decided to teach you when you're 5 or 6, and they don't want to spell it. It's too fussy a word for a 5 or 6-year-old. So you don't know you have one. How do you develop it if you don't even know you have one? So you have a sense of where you are in space. You have a sense of movement, texture. If you put, I'll just do this quickly, if you put a hand behind your back and you make a shape with it, you could draw that shape. You know what shape you're making. How do you know? It's not touching anything. Yeah, you can feel it. Now move that shape in space up or down. You know where it is relative to your back, don't you? You can't see it, you can't feel it, so I didn't ask you to touch your back. Now go further away from your back or closer to your back. You can tell all that information with what? It is not your sight. It is not your hearing. It is not your taste. It is your proprioception. It is your kinesthetic sense. But we don't talk about that. You need a very highly attuned proprioception. That's how you know how to get to certain keys on the piano, because you can't always look. Sometimes you have to look at a score, or sometimes you have to look at a conductor, yes? Or other people you're playing with. There's lots of choices there, right? You can't always look, right? So how do you know where that key is? Yes, absolutely. And you're using proprioception. And which is cultivated through proprioception. 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 Phew! We've covered a lot of ground. You guys good? Permission to continue? We okay? So this head balance is really a foundational idea in Mr. Alexander's discoveries. Because when he was reciting, he was interfering with that balance of his head before he spoke. He was tightening, was putting the parking brake on and interfering with the balance of his head on his spine. And that messed up everything. So we want to restore, the simplest version I have is let the middle of your head be over the middle of your middle. All right, but now let's go back a slide, and we're going to talk about your foundation. So many instrumentalists play seated, yes, and at Curtis, they're just going into a week of orchestra rehearsals for their first symphony concert of the year, and they're going to have 3 hours of rehearsal every day, and that's on top of their classes and other rehearsals and practicing, and they get really miserable really fast. It's a lot of sitting, right? So first thing I tell them is take breaks and stand up. Yes. Then I talk to them about what is supported sitting. So first of all, the foundation of your pelvis, first I want to steal something from a colleague that I saw online a few weeks ago. Ted Diamond is an Alexander teacher in New York City, and he said, sitting is standing on your pelvis. I loved it. That is the simplest thing to say, and I absolutely love it, so I stole it, but I'm giving him credit. Yes? It's just standing on your pelvis. But please notice, back to our body mapping idea, we always do what we think. If you think it's flat, like a shelf, it's going to help you not move. Yes? I love that you're all starting to move. It's making me so happy. It's making me so happy because you are responding visually and you're going, what? Rocking chair, rockers, rounded, and you all started moving. Praise be. Information is power, right? You all just started moving. And by the way, you all started moving from your hip fulcrum, which is the most important thing I can share with pianists, is to really move from their hip fulcrum. Because if you're moving from your spine, you're interfering with the balance of your shoulders and your arms and your hands. And then you're going to try to get rid of tension in your hands like this. And it's not going to help, not long term. Why? Because that's a systemic problem. We can't think locally, we have to think globally. I love it. I wish we could turn the Zoom around and show all this beautiful movement. Yeah, so I'm not making it up. I'll show you on Fred. I make lots of stuff up, not this one. His sit bones are an orange, and they're round. And actually, when I teach on Zoom, sometimes I didn't bring a ball, but I'll just bring out a little tennis ball, and I'll give it a little tiny amount of force, and the ball likes to move. Rounded things love to move. Yes? Then I put like a book or something flat, and I give it a little movement, and it moves a little tiny bit. Yes? Rounded things have much more potential movement. Can you sort of go along with me on that one? Yeah. So you were not designed to sit still. You weren't designed to stand still. You were designed to move. Now, you don't have to wiggle around all the time to be free, yes? But you can say, oh, am I sitting as if I was on a flat surface? Or can I just like, ooh, there's my little rounded surface. Yeah. I get to roll around. And again, pianos are big, yes? So when both hands have to go out and away, you're going to want to rock forward on those rockers, right? That's going to make it easier to reach. And then if both hands have to come in and you stay forward on your rockers, it's going to get kind of crowded, yes? So you're going to rock back a little bit, right? Can you imagine that? That this is more advantageous for this movement and this is more advantageous for this movement, right? And then what about those keys way up there? Like, you're going to roll around on your pelvis, right? As opposed to now, yes, tuck your tail under and try to come forward. You're not going to come forward at your hip joints. You're going to come forward at your diaphragm, which is going to interfere with breathing. And is that going to help you be less anxious or more anxious if you're interfering with your diaphragm? Just saying. No one needs my help being more anxious. Most of us have that one down. I don't mean to say for you, but I'll say for me, I don't need any help being anxious. I listened to the news last night. That was plenty for me. Yes? So when we enjoy, utilize, celebrate the mobility of those rockers, it's going to help keep the integrity of your torso without you having to hold it. Sit up straight. Right? You don't need to hold it. You're looking for freedom and balance. Right? So sit bones. Have your students feel them. I usually have my students sit on their hands to feel their sit bones. Now, you have to choose whether that's going to get your students, in a fit of giggles and you'll not get them back for 20 minutes and maybe not do that. Yes? But you make that call. Okay. Can we go forward 2 slides, please? I'm going to go over this a little bit. Yeah, let's just talk about it for a second. Can I invite you to join me in standing for a moment? So, yeah, it's good to stand up, right? It's good to stand up. So, as pianists, you don't usually play standing up, but maybe you present, right? Or maybe you cook dinner standing up. You might do other things standing up. I know a lot of my clients that are older populations stop going to galleries and museums because standing for periods of time is too difficult for them, which makes me sad because I'm a culture junkie and I love going to do all those things. So the lean, and if you're a violin teacher, please, or a trumpet teacher, oh my gosh, there is so much leaning going on, yes? So when your hands come up, if your hips go with your hands forward, your hips are forward and your shoulders are back, your head weight is now going right into your low back, right? So we want our hips underneath our head, and we want our hips over our ankle joints. Feet are long. Can you see his hips are kind of over his toes? That's your foot, but we want hips over ankles. And if you stand with one foot behind the other, I call it feet forward back. In martial arts, they call it 70-30, is the way it was taught to me. I'm sure it has other names. This is a much more stable way to stand because you've added depth to width. Put your feet side by side. Many of us lean. This might feel really cozy. And if you go to chop your carrots, right? You're going to fulcrum from your spine and drop your head. If you go into feet forward back, it's great for swaying. I actually have a YouTube video called Yay for the Sway, because I am a geeky gal. Yay for the sway. I teach my instrumentalists to sway from their hips. Yes, not from, you see the difference? This interference with arm balance and dexterity, which instrumentalists don't want. If they sway from here, it's going to make a huge difference. Yes? So next time you're chopping carrots, you can use your hip fulcrum. Yes? Instead of your diaphragmatic, no good fulcrum there. Especially now, pumpkin season, squash season, you have to really put a lot of force in. Try your hip fulcrums to get more power instead of this. Because see what happens to my shoulders? Yeah. So no leaning into your hips. We sway and we balance feet forward back. It's a great thing to do when you're teaching too, right? You might be standing when you teach, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good idea to get up, right? But was that enough on standing? My goodness, what did I do with all that time? Let's see what other slides we have. Thank you. Let's go forward. I just want to leave that up for a moment and let you snap a picture. That's my TED Talk, that QR code.
Provide a link to the TED Talk. It's really wonderful. So if you're not able to get a picture of that, don't fret. I'll send it to you.
And I have one more informational slide. When you're ready, let me know. Are we good, guys? You might want to snap a picture. Oh, but this is, how do we get rid of, yeah. There we go. So I want to let you know, I'm actually just creating a new page for my website, AT for Musicians, because I love you all. This is such a passion of mine to help. So I do just want to point out a few things. I have a free Facebook group called Move Free, Play Free. I love it when people ask me questions on there. I'll even make you a little tutorial video. Yes? So ask away. It's a great community. We've been sharing resources. Other people have shared resources. It's just a kind of lovely community. I encourage you to join us. I also have a weekly online class on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And your first class is always free, so please come check us out. And you never know what we'll talk about in that class. You know, someone might be playing an ukulele or who knows. Okay. I created a video course for musicians. Again, stuck at home during the pandemic. I've been teaching at Curtis all these years, and I decided to codify what I'd learned in a course. And if you join my mailing list today, I'll send you a discount code if you're interested in that course. And I have a podcast that I started. Also, I've been a busy person during the pandemic, and it's called Pedagogy Geeks, because I am so interested in how we teach what we teach. Again, you're the expert on what you teach, but man, am I interested in how we do it. Yeah, so Jonathan's been listening to that, and I'm always interested in hearing from you about what topics you'd like us to address, but I want to give a little shout out. The one on, it's with Susan Nowicki, I thought was just brilliant. I think it's episode number 3 is my favorite. They're all great, but listen to that one. She's really quite something. Great. I encourage you, yes, lots of that's free. Please check it out. I have a YouTube channel, there's all kinds of things. And I brought cards, too, with me for a discount on a first lesson for anyone that's interested. But it's got the TED Talk and my website and everything else. We didn't get to anyone at the piano. I feel really terrible.
There's a certain physical movement or thing that you're exploring.
Do we have a brave volunteer? I see some person perched forward on the front of their rockers. Does that mean you'd like a little help?
I am interested
Come on up. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. It's very heavy and light. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to get him out of the way. Sorry. Oops. And I'm running out of lavalier. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. These are top heavy. Okay.
Is this yours, Carol? Is this yours? Okay.
So I can go over a few minutes if anyone else is able to, and I apologize for doing a terrible time management. Okay. So let's do some quick check-ins, all right? So Jonathan absolutely brilliantly pointed out that the height of your stool or chair is going to make a huge difference, as well as the distance forward to back. And that's where I would always start with my students. No matter what instrument, I would look at, for really tall instrumentalists sitting in chairs, I often put them on a seat wedge to raise their pelvis. So they're not on the back of their seat rockers, they're right on top of their seat rockers. And for pianists, of course, what we're looking for, can I see your hands at the keyboard, is we don't want elbows below wrists, right? We want them level. And may I just say, I don't think there's one correct place. I think some people do better with their elbows slightly higher, and some people do better with their elbows more level with their wrists. So I do want to say I don't think it's a hard, fast rule, except I wouldn't want my elbows below, right? So you want to see what works for your student, because have you noticed we're all a little different? Yeah? Have you noticed that? Great. Great. So, in general, you're very upright.
Okay.
Yes? And I'm looking for, right, the curve, what did I call it? The balance and the mobility. And so what looks a little missing is your rib curve looks a little forward.
Okay.
So may I use my hands?
Yeah.
So if I put my hand on your head and say, oh, can you just let your ribs fall back a little bit? Oh, that's forward. Back. Into my hand.
Back.
Yeah. And then let yourself come forward at your hips, which are below. So not your lumbar spine. Actually rock on your rockers. Yeah. So I'm asking you to rock on your rockers.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I wasn't using language that made sense to you, so I'm not going to have you feel bad. So say, oh, can my ribs fall back? Sometimes I say like a sail filling with an end. So let your sail fill. But
hunch?
no, because that was a lot. So can you just yes, and then find your rockers. Yes, good. Does that feel a little different to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just allow that back to fall back. Yeah. Oh, no, don't push.
Wait.
Yeah, just like free it back. Yes, and use your rockers more. Yes, great. And then you're going to bring your hands to the piano again, but you don't need to tighten that up. That can still be mobile.
Is it mobile?
Yeah. Well, mobile is in a place. Is it more mobile? Is it less mobile? It's like, oh, that got a little more mobile, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, I feel lighter.
Ah, yes, because remember that forward head creates more downward pressure? Yeah. So then, if you needed to go this way, we would go on the rockers, and if we need to go that way, we'd use the rockers. And if we wanted both hands to go away from each other, now come on back a second, because you led from here a little bit. I could feel that shove forward. So can you let your sail be nice and back, and then use your rockers down here to go forward? Yeah. Now I'd be curious, can I ask you, just for kicks and giggles, to push forward in your ribs and go real far wide and give me a nice big chord out there? So push this forward. Give me a nice strong, yeah. But you wouldn't play it there, would you?
Oh, you said really wide. You said wide.
Yeah, I want that, but wouldn't you come forward a little bit when you play that?
Oh,
Maybe not.
sure.
So, can you come back again and let this be soft and use your sit bones to get you forward? Go ahead. Does it change the sound at all? Do you have to go? Yeah, I would say that would be not always. I would have to watch a student. So you're making a point about whether your left foot should be tucked back or not. Yes. So you're saying I should do it like this? Well, yeah. I see your point. I think it's often more nuanced because, I'm sorry, tell me your name, please.
Miriam.
Miriam also was getting rid of her thoracic curve. And if you tuck your foot, Miriam might do more of that particular habit. Well, again, there's not going to be one right way. I really want to encourage you. I see your point, yes. Well, again, she's already, yeah. So I would use that left foot to very lightly send your back into my hand from your left foot, but that wasn't lightly. So as lightly as you can. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that little freeing of those lowest ribs back.
I pull them back toward you.
Well, I'm not pulling, I'm releasing, and not your shoulders, it's at the bottom of your ribs. Yes. Now come forward at your hips. Yes. So try that left foot tucked back.
I don't feel balanced that way.
Yeah. Different things are going to work for different people. And I think that's a perfectly fine thing to try. When you tuck feet back, I really try to get instrumentalists not to do that, like orchestral musicians, because usually when you tuck a foot back, it makes your head weight come forward. Right, but two legs to stand on is more secure, so it really kind of depends. Yes? Not really. Because I'm not having you stand like that.
You mean if I was like, well, first of all, my foot's always on the pedal, you know, technically, so.
So you use your heel to send your weight back and away. But I don't want to start this because this is a new idea. This is a new idea. And there's plenty more, but I'll tell you what, I just invited you all to class. Come to class and I promise I'll talk more about it. Because what I'm going to talk about is an eccentric use to support our weight. And so some people might do that better with their feet out in front, and some people might do it better, or it might be depending on the piece, right? Or the movement of a piece might change. You might make different choices. So you're not wrong, and I wouldn't make that an always rule. I would keep my eyes open and see what works.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to?
Did you get a little?
Just on John's point, there was not this past summer, but the summer before, we had a clinician at the state conference, a very wonderful collaborative pianist from the University of Michigan, I can't recall her name. Woman, very powerful, tall, and thin. And she had really, really long legs. And she used her legs in many ways. She would do things like this, and it seemed to work for her because she played with an absolutely titanic sound. So I think a lot depends. Different bodies sometimes have to do different things, I guess. You know.
Yes, and I guess in closing, one thing I really want to say is, by all means, keep experimenting with what works for you, and just because it works better for you doesn't mean it's going to work for the student in front of you. And so always keep an open mind. Like, it's great to keep exploring what works for you. You'll learn more and more and more. And we're not all exactly the same. We're not going to translate like hello, me, hold. Like, boy, was I trying to hold. Someone else that worked fine for, right? So you want to keep an open mind about their proportionality is different than yours, their learning styles are different than yours, their imaginations and how they translate imageries, right? Like, I love talking about Ferris wheel cars and how they're never locked down, how they're always free to rotate. And I was teaching a workshop, and this woman looked up at me and said, I hate Ferris wheels. And I said, I'm not going to talk about Ferris wheels. That's not helpful to you. It's a great image. Terrible for that student. So guess who changed? Me. Right? That's not helpful for that student. So have more than one way to get at something, right? Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ariel.